Hi everyone, today I want to talk about a tricky topic which is related to emergency funds. I feel like emergency funds are best demonstrated with actual example. Well, you'll see a lot of posts actually online about how people were very happy that they had an emergency fund. As you know, in a previous video I talked about how my HVAC AC unit was broken on a very hot weekend in the summer, this summer actually. So not amazing, right? I was sweating and it was the worst, possibly the worst time for it to break. And if you want to hear more about how we discovered the issue and what led up to that, feel free to check out this other video here. Otherwise, I'm going to talk about the outcome of that, right? What happens when an AC HVAC unit breaks or any emergency expense really, and then what my learnings were from that and how we basically recovered and resolved the issue and fixed our AC unit ultimately. The contractor that we ended up hiring for repairing an AC HVAC unit was our local electric and gas company, where they supplied the gas and electricity to our building. And they quoted us about $8,000 to repair the unit. Well, more less repair and more replace the unit entirely. $8,000 is no small amount. That's actually a lot of money, depending on where you're coming from, but it was a lot of money for us. And paying for that replacement unit was not great. There were other quick fixes we could have done to just refill the Freon in the AC unit, which would have costed somewhere around $500, $600. Still not great considering that it leaks every year, so we would have to refill it right before summer every year just so we can use the unit. Those costs will add up, right? Obviously it's like 10 to 15 years before we actually add up to $8,000. But I've been told Freon is becoming more expensive, so the cost might be greater than that. If we want to improve the value of our home and we eventually want to sell it at some point in the future, we can't just tell them, hey, the AC unit is broken, so every year you have to refill Freon, right? No one's gonna enjoy hearing that, and it might even depreciate the value of our home. So the best move was actually to repair it. Luckily for us, PSEG had an interest-free repayment program for these specific situations. I'm sure units break all the time and need to be replaced. Not a lot of people have $8,000 to pay upfront, right? So what they have is this interest-free repayment program, which for us was 6 years long. It could have been different for other folks. So that was roughly came out to 72 months of interest-free payments. And when you really divide $8,000 by 72 months, you end up with $111.11 per month, right? So that's basically how much we paid on top of our gas electric bill for the next 6 years into the future. Now, to be clear, we had enough to pay $8,000, right? Because we've saved appropriately for our emergency fund, but we didn't love the idea of depleting our emergency fund just for the sake of paying for our HVAC unit when there was this interest-free option. For us, it made more sense to take on the loan and then to pay it off over time versus just paying $8,000 up front. Because if we did pay $8,000 up front, then we would have to refill our emergency fund, right? Not every emergency out there would have an interest-free option. So it's very important to consider. If it wasn't interest-free, the calculations and thought process would be very different. For us, it made more mathematical sense to actually take this $8,000 we would have used to pay off the loan or pay for the repair fee and just invest in the stock market. Over a 6-year period, $8,000 would actually, on an average return rate of 7%, would grow to be $12,005.84. There's a lot of money to be made there if we just invested it versus just paying off the loan. And this idea is very similar to the concept of why not pay off your mortgage earlier? Same idea. A mortgage is a debt. This is also a debt. The reason for doing so is that your net worth would grow more if you delayed paying off any loan earlier if the interest rates are not greater than the return in the stock market. This is not to say that I'm a fan of being in debt, right? We don't like being in debt, even if it's just for 6 years, right? It's not a great thing. It restricts your access to capital and also prevents you from taking out more loans for any other things you might be thinking about doing, whether it's buying another property or taking on debt to start a business. Another reason we thought about why we didn't pay it off right away was that right now we're currently in a technical recession. The US economy or the US Bureau of Labor Statistics may declare we are in a recession soon. But given this fact that stock markets are pretty low right now and they're on a discount, which is another reason for us to spend that money towards buying more stock when it's low. The idea of buy low, sell high, right? We're trying to buy low right now because we know the stock market will recover and will go back up over time. And really for us, it's depending on how the stock market will do, right? the stock market recovers and we're back to the mid 4,000s, right, which is the S&P 500 back to the mid 4,000s or even higher, right, back to its all-time high, then stock market is more expensive. It doesn't really make sense to constantly buy more stock. Maybe it makes more sense to pay off that debt, just because that would free up capital for us to do other things versus paying $111.11 every month. There are a few lessons we learned from this experience. Not the best experience, but we still took some lessons from it. And the biggest lesson for me actually is that we should have gotten multiple quotes, which we didn't do. I got one quote from our local utility company, PSEG, and that was it. When in reality, I should have gotten more quotes from other folks. It becomes more difficult for us just because of the fact that we are in a condo. And if you are in a condo, you have to find licensed contractors. Of course, you should, generally speaking, always try to get a licensed contractor when you're dealing with AC units, because Freon and the fact that you need to have someone licensed handle that in the first place. But with these constrictions in place, there's only a couple of contractors we could select from. Our HOA is more offhand, but for those of you who are in a condo unit and you are responsible for your HVAC system, you might have a tougher time finding a contractor that fits all the specifications. But also, I wouldn't skimp out on hiring a contractor that's worth the price. And if you're sweating in the summer, you don't want it to break again and have to call them back. That's not the best experience. Well, all in all, 8K was reasonable, right? It was within reason. If I did a quick Google search about how much it would cost to install an HVAC or replace an HVAC AC unit, the prices do range, but 8K was within price given the fact that we don't live in a low or medium cost of living area, right? We live right next to New York City, which is a very high cost of living area, and I can imagine prices for anything in general is much higher. The second lesson I learned was researching and understanding other options for paying from an HVAC unit, such as the WorryFree program. And it's not an advertisement for PSEG or the WorryFree program. It's more of something that I've learned along the way. The WorryFree program, at least for us, functions as a form of insurance. Right? If your HVAC unit breaks down, or really anything that might insure breaks down, then they'll repair it for free for labor and services. Obviously, you have to pay sort of a monthly premium every month. As far as I know, there isn't really a deductible in a sense, the same way as health insurance, but they should be able to recover the most costs of repairing the unit. And to just cover the cooling unit, it would have been $20.49 per month. Now, $20.49 per month, if you divide $8,000 divided by $20.49 is 390 months, or 32.5 years. Most HVAC systems don't last 32.5 years. They last somewhere between 10 to 15 years. So this is actually a great deal when you really think about it, in terms of like, hey, my HVAC unit, should I insure it in a sense? Maybe. Right? There's obviously other options you could have chosen. Maybe I should have researched other forms of insurance for the home and see if those have covered, but WorryFree is a program that's offered in our area. At the same time, you can check with your local gas and electric company to see what kind of programs they offer to repair your HVAC unit. And if there's any pre-planning you can do just to get ahead of having to replace the unit or to repair the unit for any reason. Just make sure that the policy that you're looking at does provide the coverage that you're looking for. Basically, get on the phone with someone and talk to them and figure out if it covers everything that you would like, including repairs and replacements. This is just a huge lesson for us to be prepared. Have an emergency fund if we need it, but always recognize that hey, home ownership comes with costs, right? That's why I'm always a little bit in the middle when people say, purchasing home is always the best. Well, when you purchase a home, you have to pay for all these other repairs. You can't just pull $8,000 out of your pocket out of nowhere unless you've appropriately saved for it. Right? So the debate with renting and home ownership, I'm a little bit in the middle depending on where you are financially. All right, that's a wrap. Hopefully this example and real life example would encourage you to both save for an emergency fund and also look into any expensive home repairs you might have coming up and that you think you can save for, or look up something similar to the WorryFree program for. All right, thank you. I appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one.